With any decision, it's important to understand what you need, what you want, and how much you're willing to sacrifice in order to get it. The Toyota Grand Highlander and Lexus TX are two pleasant barges for people with supersized needs. Two questions remain. Is the Lexus worth $10,000 more? And is the Mazda CX-90 a better alternative? Each of these are all new for 2024, and each have their own idea of what full-size-ish family transportation looks like. For Mazda, it's a premium crossover with impressive build quality and a silky inline six. For Lexus, it's superb comfort, fresh tech, and commendable versatility. And it seems like the grand scheme of the Grand Highlander is big box. I won't get lost in the features today, but each of these comes standard with key amenities like LED projector headlights, proximity entry, and a power rear tailgate. But there is a standout here when it comes to value, and that's going to be the Mazda CX-90, because every single model will have all-wheel drive and it still undercuts the Toyota. I think my only exterior gripe about the Mazda is from certain angles it looks unflatteringly bulbous. I don't feel too strongly about the style of any of these, but let me know what you guys think in the comments section. I would like to note the Lexus does have some interesting design choices. From the body color grille, the electronic door handles, this oddly large gap above the headlight, and the rear window that wants you to believe it's bigger than it actually is. Briefly, I'd like to thank the folks over at Royal South Mazda and Toyota for letting me test drive a couple of the cars used in today's video. Their staff is friendly and Royal is dedicated to the community. If you're in the market, check them out. Each of them offers a 360 view camera, which I would recommend as each of them can easily crest $50,000, sometimes $60,000. And they all share similarly bloated exterior dimensions. The interior of the Mazda CX-90 is an Audi badge short of becoming the West Coast standard for affluent soccer parents. Even the entry-level trims provide a solid feeling with nice materials that only improve as you go up further in trims. The abundance of tactile analog controls furthers the notion that Mazda put consideration into the details. I do wish the 10.3-inch infotainment system was a little better integrated into the dashboard, and its oversimplified nature may cause a few things to require a couple extra steps, but compared to the other two here, this is much easier to use while you're in motion. The controls are set right where your hands naturally lie, and the response is quick. It can operate as a touchscreen while in Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but unfortunately, you have to spend a lot of money to get that as wireless. While the CX-90 will have some nice features at the low grades, when it comes to your mid-tier outfits, I think the Toyo Bros come with a little more equipment, like a heated steering wheel, ventilated front seats, and even the option for ventilated rear seats. The door pockets are alright, but there's not really a ton of cubbies for such a large family car. The Mazda also comes with mostly small cup holders, but I do like the seats. They sit a little on the firm side. It would be nice to see longer seat bottoms for better thigh support, but they're overall shaped well. They hold you in through corners or bad roads, and lumbar adjustment is standard. Despite this wide center console, space is good too, even in the back seat. Someone over 6 feet can sit in all 3 rows, just not with much comfort, especially in the back, even if you reallocate space. That said, I think most families could drive this without much compromise. The cargo area is a similar story. It's highly usable, but largely mid-pack when considering what this is going against. Whereas the Grand Highlander is ginormous, the cargo hold is well-shaped while providing impressive dimensions. The third row can accommodate full-size adults with relative ease, and even if you have someone my size in every row, you can adjust the seat to gift each person a degree of comfort that is virtually non-existent among 3-row crossovers. The seats are a little more soft and supportive in the rear than what you get with the Mazda. And up front, I almost prefer this over the Lexus. One big reason behind that is analog controls. They're finished in matte, so they won't garner fingerprints, they're easy to use, and they feel nice too. Even though the materials will improve on the higher grades of Grand Highlander, they won't quite reach that of the TX, and that's especially present here on the XLE grade. I'd also say the Mazda has a leg up in this department, but just like the other two, this is a sturdy feeling interior with good panel fitment. It's also the most practical. You have a compartment above the glove box, giant one here. You have big space for cups, bottles, phones, really whatever you could think of, and there's still more in the doors. Plus, the infotainment system is Toyota's new setup, which comes with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on all grades. The UI is simple, response and resolution are good, and you have either a partial or full digital gauge cluster. I think the straightforward, practical nature of the Toyota will make this the most attractive here for families looking for space with a premium touch added on top. But if you want a much more extensive luxury experience and you're okay losing a little bit of functionality, the Lexus TX is tailored for you. Once again, the build quality is good, but the materials are in a different league. You have some convincing metal accents, a little bit of suede, leather across the whole interior here in the luxury trim. This undoubtedly has much more of a wow factor, even if you're looking at the base level, but it's the seats that really sell me on the TX. So you have phenomenal thigh support that gets even better with the optional extendo cushion. The bolstering is light, yet it's more present than what you'll get with the Toyota. Even at my height, I drove this for 10 hours over the course of 2 days and had basically no fatigue. It's not all great though. One, I do appreciate the electronic release, but I did have to explain how to use it to every passenger. The available head-up display is cool, and I like how I can control it with the steering wheel, but it does add too many steps to certain functions when compared to most other Toyota setups. And the ooh, ah of having a giant touchscreen is mitigated by incorporating HVAC controls into the bottom. I do like that they left physical dials and defrost buttons, yet it still seems inferior to leaving in the switches and buttons. At least the infotainment is identical to the no-frills unit found in its sibling. A couple quirks, like the Toyota, this has a giant compartment next to the passenger. The cup holders come out, and there's another sneaky cubby underneath the wireless charger. When it comes to sound systems, I haven't tested the Bose system in the Mazda, but I would expect it to be on par with the Mark Levinson from what I've heard. This system has great power, good surround sound, though I think it's worthy to mention that the bass stereo in the Mazda with 8 speakers actually performs pretty well. Moving into the back seat, it's a similar story to the Grand Highlander. You have comfortable seats, big space, though I do have less seats than the other two. But interestingly, Lexus does do the center console better than anyone here because it's completely removable, whereas in the Mazda it like flips down, and in the Toyota, if you have the captain's chairs, it just acts as an immovable obstacle to trip people. Fold all the seats down and you're looking at an identical space when compared to the Toyota. For $10,000 more, this needs to pull ahead on the road. And that's where things get a little complicated. Standard, you'll have a traditional 8-speed automatic hooked up with a 2.4-liter turbocharged inline-4. And that's what I have here with the TX-350. Flat out, it managed 0 to 60 in 7.3 seconds. This is going to sound like a Toyota Camry. It's muffled at least, but the 2.4-liter engine is based on Toyota's run-of-the-mill 2.5-liter. Because of the 2.4-liter's great mid-range torque, this has no issues merging. So long as you're not towing a lot or keen on performance, this should be fine. Though it's not the experience that I was maybe wanting at, in some rare cases, $70,000. Go with the TX-500 and you'll have Toyota's hybrid max powertrain, which grants you much more power from the same 2.4-liter turbocharged engine in combination with an electric motor up front and a separate one around the rear. This also has a special 6-speed automatic, and on top of all that, the most decked out TX-550 will have a naturally aspirated 3.5-liter V6 with a plug-in hybrid powertrain. That'll have Toyota's e-CVT. The highway experience of this is nice. Road noise is subdued. The engine putters around 1,500, 1,600 RPM at 65 miles per hour. Wind noise is mostly hush, but this combined with the seats makes it a great highway cruiser. Rolling on 22-inch wheels, the Lexus TX is surprisingly at home on this appalling Indiana back road. This glides over small to medium-sized imperfections. I hear more of the road than I feel it. Nothing here is going to make you wince. And it does all of this without any adaptive dampening unless you get the Hybrid Max powertrain, and even then it's more so tuned for better handling. This is a large SUV with, relatively high center of gravity, but this actually handles pretty well, and Lexus has done a good job of tuning the steering. Yes, it's going to be numb, but it's direct and it builds up a little bit in weight to keep this from feeling disconnected. Body roll is also a little less than what I was anticipating. Plus, if you live in some mountains and you want to take control of the shifting, you have some nice paddle shifters. And if the road isn't perfect, the TX doesn't complain, feeling sure-footed as it wafts over the undulations. Now, I wouldn't recommend you take any of these off-road, and the Lexus CX-30 and the Grand Highlander come standard as front-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is an extra, though you'll get, a trail mode that'll try to use the brakes to get you out of some hairy situations. Mazda's trail mode is usually a little bit better, but in the Hybrid Max Grand Highlander and TX hybrids, you'll have Toyota's Direct 4 all-wheel drive system that utilizes a high-output rear motor, with the 500H in particular getting rear-wheel steering to further improve its ability to change direction. Right now, it's wet, it's 34 degrees out, and the system is monitoring things like that when choosing whether or not to be all-wheel drive. Either way, the Mazda does get better gas mileage unless we're comparing it to the hybrids, where the 2.5-liter Grand Highlander pulls off some absurd numbers. In driving the Grand Highlander, your view outward is very similar. In fact, many other things are similar. Under the hood, you'll have the same 2.4-liter turbocharged engine, except it runs on regular fuel and makes slightly less power. Same could be said about the Hybrid Max version of the Grand Highlander. The difference here comes from the regular hybrid, which will utilize Toyota's 2.5-liter electrified setup. This will make the least power out of any options here, but the gas mileage easily makes up for that, and it still provides sufficient acceleration, which the purpose of the Toyota is to be, let's face it, an appliance, and it does that pretty well. It doesn't really weigh any less than the TX, so performance, I would say, is similar. The smooth shifts, its quick reaction time, all feel identical to the Lexus TX. The only qualm I've had with this transmission is that occasionally, if you really jump on it from a stop, say you're at a stoplight trying to make a left-hand turn, there can be a notable lag. I hope Toyota works on this, because outside of that, this powertrain works well here. I don't think anyone's going to decipher the extra 10 horsepower of the Lexus TX, but you will feel the financial difference of throwing in regular fuel and getting roughly the same gas mileage. I will add, the Lexus TX has a little bit more sound deadening, so it doesn't sound as grumbly as the Toyota. Pulling up to 65 miles per hour, there is noticeably more wind noise and maybe a little more road noise too. The Grand Highlander doesn't dance through corners quite as well as the Lexus. There is an increase in body roll, yet it remains sure-footed on a winding road no matter the surface. Just bring it up to a little bit higher speeds and you'll definitely feel a difference in athleticism. The steering, even in sport mode, is a little bit lighter, and surprisingly, it's more vague and doesn't build up in the same way. The Lexus actually does feel a little bit more substantial. Not a bad road, oh my gosh. It is hard for me to decide whether it's the Grand Highlander or the Lexus TX that is more comfortable. These are each very forgiving SUVs that make short work of the worst roads. The Toyota I have here has an advantage because it is much more sidewall. I think it ever so slightly reduces jitteriness. For most people, you're not going to be able to tell a difference between these two on a bad road. This will also offer complete hands-free driving with traffic jam assists at low speeds for, well, traffic jams. That's something that's available on the most loaded specs of either the Toyota or the Lexus, and it uses a sensor that's monitoring your face. It'll occasionally think I have my eyes closed, at which point I have to start tweaking in order for it to recognize that I'm still conscious. It's a nitpick for a system that would otherwise be very helpful depending on what kind of driving you do. And when it comes to crash tests, the Mazda CX-90 slightly out-crashes the Grand Highlander and TX. They both come with similar active safety aids like autonomous continuous braking and blind spot monitoring, but the Toyota will get an actual lane centering system standard, whereas that is withheld to very limited CX-90s. Overall, compared to the Grand Highlander, the Lexus TX does live up to its upscale name. But in several ways, the Mazda CX-90 does luxury even better. The most important thing it got right is the engine. So this is going to utilize a 3.3-liter turbocharged inline-six. On most models, you'll find a respectable 280 horsepower and a meaty 332 pound-feet of torque. Now, Mazda also offers a high-output version of this that can put out up to 340 ponies. You can also get it in a plug-in hybrid that'll have less range than the Lexus TX, but cost much less. Yet that's going to use the 4-banger, and really the 6 is what you want because it has that reassuring engine tone. Oh, it's not aggressive, it's just premium, as is the power band. This makes plenty of low-range torque, which translates into healthy passing power. Pair that with a well-geared 8-speed automatic, and this accelerates in a more effortless manner than the Lexus or the Toyota. It's also a hair quicker. The CX-90 is a mild hybrid, allowing for seamless auto stop start. In fact, it'll occasionally shut down while you're coasting without any fuss. Now, the Mazda's 8-speed auto uses a wet clutch, which the 6-speed automatic in the Hybrid Max will actually utilize something very similar, but this can result in occasional jerkiness, and it can also hesitate a little. But once you get rolling, it shifts in a very smooth manner. Plus, this is the only car here that actually has a true rear bias. Mazda says this should help with balance, and it does feel more ready to dance than the Lexus TX and especially the Grand Highlander. The Mazda takes an interesting approach to steering. It is undoubtedly slow, but it is precise. Over abused stretches of road, it remains confident. Its suspension, that's a little bit firmer than the other two, keeps this poised with minimal body roll for this size of vehicle. And that direct steering also provides more feedback and builds up naturally, something that Mazda is really good at when they put their minds to it. This, as a 3-row vehicle, is about as engaging as it gets, but even when you're not driving in an obnoxious manner, the way this handles makes this feel like a much more expensive product. The only trade-off, at parking lot speeds, the steering is heavy enough to give you a bicep pump. Now, taking this over the same beat-up back road, it is still smooth, but it does translate a little bit more into the cabin than the Lexus TX, and larger potholes will also pronounce themselves more clearly, but not to a degree that's frustrating in the slightest. I think what I noticed more are some of the noises. This and the Lexus TX I'm driving have similar miles, about 4,000, and this at low speeds can make creaking sounds while turning. There's a little more faint cabin noises over bad roads. Lexus quality is still hard to beat. Getting up to highway speed is no problem, and once you're there, I wouldn't say it's as quiet as the Lexus, but the engine rarely raises its voice, and there's noticeably less wind noise than the Grand Highlander. When it comes to reliability, Mazda typically does well, but the CX-90 marks a fresh chapter for the brand. This in every way is an all-new powertrain for them, and it's an all-new model on top of that, whereas the Grand Highlander may have a new nameplate, but it does borrow much of its powertrains from other models. And an added bonus is that all of the Toyota engines use direct and port fuel injection to help keep the intake valves clean. Statistically, Toyota does live up to their reputation, so while there's not a whole lot of history here for me to digest, I would probably lean towards the Grand Highlander if you really want low running cost, as premium fuel and some Lexus parts will demand a little bit more from your wallet. But that leads me to the ultimate question I wanted to answer: is it worth spending more to get something like the Lexus TX when cars like the CX-90 and the Grand Highlander exist? So which one would I recommend? Well, for most people's needs, the Toyota Grand Highlander makes the most sense, because when you're buying a 3-row vehicle, comfort, size, and ease of use are usually the most sought after. If you're willing to compromise just a little bit on rough road comfort or 3rd-row size, the Mazda CX-90 is the most rewarding to drive. It has the most refined engine, and the most personality. So, as a car enthusiast with no kids, this is the one I'd pick up. While it's easily evident that Mazda put forth a ton of effort in making this a proper luxury vehicle, the Lexus still does it better in the important areas like ride quality, seat comfort, features, and appearance, which is subjective, but that's enough to give it the edge as my luxury recommendation. That conclusion feels too easy, so let's pick an overall winner. Taking everything into consideration, including the price, I think the Lexus deserves the win. It does pretty much everything well. Sure, it won't handle or sound like the Mazda, and it doesn't have the interior simplicity of the Toyota, but it's premium, remarkably well-rounded, and versatile, the latter of which is something you don't find often in luxury SUVs. It's like a bigger Volvo XC90 that won't steal your rainy day fund in the long run. If your budget can accommodate one, I think it's worth the extra money. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please leave a like to help me tear into the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more fun, detailed car content, and I'll catch you in the next one.